Play it, Sam, play it again. Take me back to you know when. Let's hear it, Sam, for good old World War II. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Play it, Sam, play it again. Gee, the world was simple then, back when hearts were brave and love was true. Then we knew the good guys, then we knew the bad, the bad. Right was right and wrong was wrong, according to Mom and Dad, and we believed them. Then a war was called a war, proud as trumpet horns, but a rose by any other name still has thorns. Do-do-do. Play it, Sam, play it for me. Take me where I want to be, back with you and good old World War II. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Far away, I just can't make today. Far as I can be from good old World War III.
It says, the decree of the President of the Russian Federation on the approval of the fundamentals of the state policy of the Russian Federation in the field of nuclear deterrence. It says, I decree, President Putin decrees, 1, to approve the attached fundamentals of the state policy of the Russian Federation in the field of nuclear deterrence. And the next point, which is very important, is to recognize as invalid the decree of the President of the Russian Federation dated June 2, 2020, document number 355, on the fundamentals of state policy of the Russian Federation in the field of nuclear deterrence, which was this document's predecessor. Okay, so this is not just an amendment, they are lock, stock, and two smoking barrels cancelling the previous version of this, and this replaces it in its entirety. That's why it's very important. Okay. Now, the third point of the cover sheet for this document, the introduction, says, and this is once again very important because that's not subject to ratification. We're not going to have 3 readings in the Russian parliament. It's not going to take effect in 60 days or 90 days or with Santa Claus approval. Okay, specifically says, point 3 of the cover sheet, this decree shall enter into force on the date of its signing. And it then says, signed by the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, in Moscow at the Kremlin on the 19th of November, 2024. So it comes into force today. So where you got Jones and Ritter saying, oh, we need to resolve this, we've only got 60 days, we need bullshit. Okay? This took effect this morning. Okay? It's now Russian law. It's not subject to any form of procedure. It's done. And this is why Lavrov said it's valid now and it's in law. Okay? He spelt it out. But that may not have been obvious to some of the journalists in the room. But when you read the document, it tells you why. Okay? So then we get into it. 27 paragraphs. I'm going to go through it fairly fast. Okay? So it says, approved by decree of the President of the Russian Federation, 19th November 2024, document number 991, state policy of the Russian Federation in the field of nuclear deterrence. Section 1 is general provisions, paragraph 1. These fundamentals are a document of strategic planning in the field of ensuring defense and reflect official views on the essence of nuclear deterrence. They define military dangers and threats for the neutralization of which nuclear deterrence is carried out. The principles of nuclear deterrence, as well as the conditions for the transition of the Russian Federation to the use of nuclear weapons. So that's going from conventional to nuclear weapons use. Okay, so it's incredible in the additional 26 paragraphs how much they actually get in. That would normally be an entire book or an operations manual. Okay. Paragraph 2, guaranteed deterrence of a potential enemy from aggression against the Russian Federation and / or its allies. Ding ding, number 1. Everybody have a quick slurp. In fact, I'm going to pause for a moment to take a quick swig of particularly fine Rioja Reserva. In case anyone is wondering, this particular blend is 100% Tempranillo, but it is very tasty. And it goes on to say this deterrence is amongst the highest state priorities. Deterrence of aggression is ensured by the entire military might of the Russian Federation, including nuclear weapons. It goes on to say 3. The state policy of the Russian Federation in the field of nuclear deterrence, hereafter referred to state policy of nuclear deterrence, is a set of coordinated, and here this is very much like the Europeans referring to whole of society response. Okay, so they're saying it's a set of coordinated political, military technical, diplomatic, economic, informational, and other measures implemented with the support of the forces and means of nuclear deterrence to prevent aggression. Okay, so let's go over that again. Coordinated, political, military technical, that basically scientific, diplomatic, economic, informational, and other measures, whole of society. Okay, and it's designed to deter and prevent aggression against the Russian Federation and or its allies. Ding ding, number 2. Everybody can take another slurp should you be participating in the game. Now, there, got to explain why this is important, because in the last week, the mutual defense treaty between Russia and North Korea has been ratified by both the Russian Duma and whatever the equivalent is in North Korea. I can't remember the name, the People's Congress or whatever. So that's fully ratified and in effect now. Okay, so given that the attack occurred after that ratification, and that ratification only triggered responses to attacks that occurred after the date of ratification, this is a new attack upon the territory of the Russian Federation. Okay, but this document appears to extend the nuclear umbrella over Russian allies who aren't specifically listed. Now, if they do a similar mutual defense treaty with Iran, which we're not sure if it's going to be included, but they have said that it includes everything, all aspects of their interrelationship between the Russian Federation and the Islamic Republic of Iran. So it would indicate that defense is within it, the document that is due to be signed. Then it would appear to include Iran in this nuclear umbrella coverage, which is a major issue in relation to the aardvarks. Okay, but obviously it could also extend to Syria. They're clearly a Russian ally, and it could most definitely, and that is stated, extend to Belarus. And once again, it may well extend to Cuba and possibly other countries as well, especially China. So that's a really big issue there. Now, the next sentence is key as well, because they say, when they're talking about preventing aggression against the Russian Federation or its allies, that's still number 2, comma, united by a common plan. What the heck is that common plan? It's the first time we've seen that in any of these documents. Okay? So we have the Collective Security Treaty Organization with Commonwealth of Independent States. We have some bilateral treaties. But what is this common plan of the Russian allies? That's a big freaking question mark there. Okay? It says the state policy in the field of nuclear deterrence is defensive in nature, aimed at maintaining the potential of nuclear forces at a level sufficient to ensure nuclear deterrence and guarantee the protection of the sovereignty of the territorial integrity of the state, deterrence of a potential enemy from aggression against the Russian Federation and or its allies, ding number 3, another slug there, and in the event of a military conflict, preventing the escalation of military actions and their termination on terms acceptable to the Russian Federation and or its allies. Number 4, ding. Okay, so you can see that the word allies is featuring very, very heavily in this document, and it's not even bound to the Russian Federation. It specifically says here and/or its allies. So they are extending the nuclear umbrella over these allies, even categorically, even if Russia itself is not attacked. Okay, that's particularly freaking important in the case of North Korea and Iran, in case the aardvarks go nuclear against them. Very, very important indeed. The Russian Federation considers nuclear weapons as a means of deterrence, the use of which is an extreme and forced measure, and takes all necessary efforts to reduce the nuclear threat and prevent the aggravation of interstate relations that could provoke military conflicts. Obviously, the Russian invasion was completely unprovoked, including nuclear ones. The normative and legal framework of these fundamentals consists of the Constitution of the Russian Federation, generally recognized principles and norms of international law, international treaties of the Russian Federation, federal constitutional laws, federal laws, and other normative legal acts and documents governing defense and security. The provisions in paragraph 7 of these fundamentals are mandatory for all federal government bodies, other non-federal government bodies, so like the oblast, the state organizations, and organizations participating in ensuring nuclear deterrence. These fundamentals, and this is an important point here, because this is what you would call the variation clause or the amendment clause, And they say these fundamentals may be clarified, i.e. changed, depending on external and internal factors affecting defense. In section 2 of the document, starting at paragraph 9, the essence of nuclear deterrence. They are defining here key concepts of their defense policy for the Russian Federation. It says, the Russian Federation exercises nuclear deterrence against a potential enemy which is understood as individual states and military coalitions / blocs or alliances that consider the Russian Federation as a potential enemy. That is NATO. They don't say the 4 letters, but that is NATO, because in the NATO strategic doctrine, they have defined Russian Federation as an enemy and a People's Republic of China as a long-term threat. Okay, so that basically they could have just said NATO. Okay, and those groups that possess nuclear and or other types of weapons of mass destruction or significant combat potential of general purpose forces, by which they mean by general purpose conventional forces. Nuclear deterrence is also exercised against states that provide the territory, air, and or sea space and resources. So resources includes money, and we learned today that the Biden administration have given the Ukrainians another $275 million worth of kit to attack Russia. Okay, that fulfills that condition there. And resources for the preparation and implementation of aggression against the Russian Federation. Now, you can argue the point about whether Russia's the aggressor and Ukraine are defending their territorial integrity. But the way the Russians are looking at this is an attack upon the homeland is aggression. So I'm not going to argue the toss about definitions in that regard, or who is the baddie historically. We've got to see this from the Russian point of view. Okay, paragraph 10. Aggression by any state from the military coalition, bloc, or alliance against the Russian Federation and or its allies, ding ding number 5, is considered as aggression of the coalition / bloc / alliance as a whole. Okay, so bear in mind that America has signed a 10-year bilateral treaty with Ukraine. So is Britain, and Britain's now talking about upgrading that to a 100-year alliance. So all of those would fulfill the condition of paragraph 10 of the nuclear use doctrine for the Russian Federation. Okay, it says in para 11, aggression against the Russian Federation and or its allies, ding ding, I've lost count now, is that 5 or 6, but drink up anyway, by any non-nuclear state such as Ukraine, with the participation or support of a nuclear state such as the United States, is considered, as happened today, as their joint attack. So we crossed that threshold today. 12. Nuclear deterrence is aimed at ensuring that a potential adversary understands the inevitability of retaliation in the event of aggression against the Russian Federation and or its allies. Yet again, allies is in every other paragraph of this document without listing who those countries are. So that's very open-ended. Sam, am I coming through clearly to you?
Yes, continue.
Cool. So para 13, nuclear deterrence is ensured by the presence of the armed forces of the Russian Federation of combat-ready forces and means capable of using nuclear weapons to inflict unacceptable damage on a potential adversary under any conditions, as well as the readiness and determination of the Russian Federation to use such weapons. So that's key there. Combat readiness and determination, which is political will. Okay. 14. Nuclear deterrence shall be carried out continuously in peacetime during periods of immediate threat of aggression and in wartime, up and until the use of nuclear weapons. In 15. The main military dangers that, depending upon changes in the military, political, and strategic situation, may develop into military threats to the Russian Federation, including threats of aggression, that call for the neutralization of those threats, of which nuclear deterrence will therefore be carried out, are, and they then give a very important list of points. Okay, I'm going to go through these. Point A is the potential adversary's possession of nuclear or other types of weapons of mass destruction that may be used against the Russian Federation and or its allies. Again, I think that's number 8 at this point, as well as the means of delivering these types of weapons. And B, the potential adversary's possession and deployment of missile defense systems and means, medium and short range cruise and ballistic missiles, high precision, non-nuclear and hypersonic weapons, unmanned strike vehicles of various basings, so not just in Ukraine, but in other countries as well, and ding, 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 directed energy weapons that may be used against the Russian Federation. And as Ruckus and Brian Hesher said when I was doing this with them on the Alternate Current radio show a few hours ago, what the fuck? Directed energy weapons that may be used against the Russian Federation. That's way out there, right?
They should point, Simon, they should paint the Kremlin roof blue. Remember that? Remember that idiot thing that was going around for a while?
Yeah, no, I'm wearing a blue bowler hat when I walk around my neighborhood so I don't get taken out by directed energy weapons. So yeah, it shouldn't mock that at all. In point C, the build-up by a potential adversary in territories adjacent to the Russian Federation. Oh, so like Armenia or Georgia or Finland, or which Finland's inviting in nuclear weapons. They're begging for the Russians to nuke them, right? Or for that matter, Japan. Because Japan borders the Russian Federation. The border literally goes through the middle of an island that they share, right? So this is widespread. Territories adjacent to the Russian Federation and its allies, ding ding, I think it's number 9, and in adjacent maritime areas of general purpose, i.e. conventional, force groups that include nuclear weapon delivery vehicles, such as the F-16, B-52, B-2, B-1, etc., and or military infrastructure like all the bases in Germany and Romania and Poland and the Baltics and Sweden and Finland and Turkey, etc., and Diego Garcia, which are the military infrastructure that would support the deployment of nuclear weapons. The creation and deployment of a potential adversary in space of missile defense and anti-satellite warfare systems. Remember how we all freaked out when Congressman Mike Turner, head of the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee, was like, oh, the Russians are going to blow up all our satellites. As well as strike systems. So note there, potential adversary deployment in space of defense, anti-satellite, and strike systems. So it's 3 categories of space weapons: defense, anti-satellite, and strike. The deployment of nuclear weapons and their delivery vehicles in the territories of non-nuclear states. So that's Turkey, Germany, and many other European countries where there are American nuclear weapons in bunkers that supposedly are controlled by the Americans, but not the host countries. Okay, so those are all shit out of luck. You're hosting the nuclear weapons. We're going to whack you with nukes. Okay, This is the next point is very important in terms of AUKUS and the Quad and the America, Japan, Korea coalition and the America, Japan, Australia, and Philippines coalition. So category E that might trigger the use of Russian nuclear weapons is the creation of new or expanded military coalitions, blocs, or alliances, leading to the approach of their military infrastructure towards the borders of the Russian Federation. Huge number of groups qualify under category E. F is missing. G, actions by a potential adversary aimed at isolating part of the territory of the Russian Federation, including blocking access to communications or vital transport. And what they're talking about there is the enclave of Kaliningrad, which is surrounded by Lithuania and Poland. And the Russians have a rail line going through Belarus into Kaliningrad, but the Lithuanians frequently sever it. So there they are pre-qualifying any actions taken against Kaliningrad, which is chocker with Russian tactical nuclear weapons as well. Actions by a potential adversary aimed at the destruction or annihilation of ecologically hazardous facilities of the Russian Federation that may lead to man-made ecological or social disasters. What they're talking about there are Russian nuclear power plants, and in particular the Kursk nuclear power plant that, in addition to the Zaporizhzhia, where the Ukrainian invasion of the Kursk Oblast appeared to be intended to capture the Kursk nuclear power plant and then either trigger a meltdown or threaten to cook it off as part of a negotiation for Russian withdrawal from the occupied Ukrainian territories. Okay, so that literally was the goal, the stated goal of the Ukrainians a few months ago. Planning and conducting by a potential adversary of large-scale military exercises near the borders of the Russian Federation. Sam, do you remember the name of those two exercises that we talked about on the show that were indeed large-scale military exercises near the borders of the Russian Federation?
Something Thunder.
Thunderstrike 2024, yes.
Thunderstrike, yeah. I forget the other one.
And the other one was Steadfast Defender. And they literally on that were flying B-52s across the Baltic Sea into Estonia and then doing a hard turn away from the Russian border, but looked like they were going to launch nuclear weapons against Moscow.
Not provocative at all.
Not provocative at all. So they're now saying, yeah, from now on, that's potentially going to trigger a nuclear response. Okay, it's a huge expansion of the categories of situations in which the Russians might nuke us. Okay, big expansion. The last one goes on to uncontrolled proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, their delivery vehicle technologies, and equipment for their manufacture. Okay, so that's quite wide there as well, because the Ukrainians have been talking about making dirty bombs, and Zelensky specifically said, we've got all the materials we need, so they would have to change the output of their nuclear power plants to create plutonium, but they've got loads and loads of spent fuel rods that they could just strap to bombs, fly into Moscow and blow up and, contaminate the area for like 1,000 years, right? So they then go in paragraph 16 to talk about the principles of nuclear deterrence. And they say these are A, continuity of measures to ensure nuclear deterrence. B, adaptability of nuclear deterrence to military dangers and threats. C, uncertainty for a potential adversary of the scale, time, and place of possible use of nuclear deterrence forces and means. So that's strategic ambiguity. D, centralization of state management of the activities of federal executive bodies and organizations participating in ensuring nuclear deterrence. Then D is repeated. This really does indicate this was done in a rush, right? A real big hurry to get this out. In response, in terms of at least the timing to the Ukrainian strike, and to warn the Americans off, like, stop now, like you're right on the abyss. The rationality of the structure and composition of nuclear deterrence forces and means, as well as their maintenance at a level sufficient to accomplish the assigned tasks. E, which should be E or F. Maintenance of constant readiness of the allocated part of nuclear deterrence forces and means for combat use. And finally, centralization of control over the use of nuclear weapons, including those deployed outside the territory of the Russian Federation. Now, that's two things, obviously. Submarines are outside of the territory, right? So they've got their planes, their land-based rocket forces, and their naval forces. But it's also in terms of actually putting Russian nuclear weapons in other countries. So we know officially that they've already put tactical nukes inside Belarus. But where else might they put them? Might they put them in Iran? Might they put them in Syria? Might they put them in North Korea? Those are all important considerations that aren't fully spelled out here. Okay. In 17, the nuclear deterrence forces of the Russian Federation include land, sea, and air-based nuclear forces. That's what they call their nuclear triad: land, sea, and air. Section 3, conditions for the transition of the Russian Federation to the use of nuclear weapons. Starting on paragraph 18, the Russian Federation reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in response to the use of nuclear and or other types of weapons of mass destruction against it and or its allies. I think that's number 10. Okay, I'm going to pause there just for a moment, take another slurp of this particularly fine rioja. I invite everyone else to join me in whatever beverage you happen to be consuming for this purpose. Drinking that out of a 1950s Riedel Austrian glassware makes it particularly tasty. Now, it goes on to say, as well as in the event of aggression against the Russian Federation and or the Republic of Belarus as the participant in the Union State, that's the Union State between Russia and Belarus, much like the European Union, with the use of conventional weapons. So they're saying for its allies, for Russian allies, it's nuclear or other weapons of mass destruction. But for Belarus, it's even the use of conventional weapons that may create a critical threat to their sovereignty and or territorial integrity. So there's a distinction there, okay? This is weapons of mass destruction, including nukes, against its allies. But for Russia or Belarus, it includes conventional weapons creating a critical threat. So that's a threshold marker there, the criticality of the threat. And so unlike Ritter and Jones, we here can see, by doing what the Russians have asked us to do, albeit without the shipping container full of greasy hookers, that we're reading the entire document. And so we're finding the nuances. It's particularly important when we're considering what are the triggers going to be. Is it a massive attack? Is it a critical threat? Very important nuances. The conditions determining the possibility of the Russian Federation use of nuclear weapons are receipt of reliable information, note reliable, of ballistic missiles attacking the territories of the Russian Federation and or its allies, ding ding, number 11 there. Use by the enemy of nuclear or other types of weapons of mass destruction on the territory of the Russian Federation and or its allies, ding ding, number 12, on military formations or objects of the Russian Federation located outside its territory. Okay. The enemy's impact on critically important state or military facilities of the Russian Federation, the disabling of which will lead to the disruption of the response actions of nuclear forces. The Ukrainians have already done this. They flied drones into these giant Russian over-the-horizon early warning radar systems. So that point is now specifically covered in 19C, the disabling of critically important Russian military facilities, which would lead to the disruption of the response action of their nuclear forces. That has already been done. Okay? Indeed, aggression against the Russian Federation and or the Republic of Belarus as participants in the Union with the use of conventional weapons creating a critical threat to their sovereignty. That, frankly, is a repeat. And then this next point here, there's another important series of words here. Receipt of reliable information about a massive launch of air or space attack weapons. Space attack weapons, what the fuck there? Okay? Strategic or tactical aircraft, cruise missiles, unmanned, which is drones, hypersonic, and other aircraft, and their crossing of the state border of the Russian Federation. Okay? The decision to use nuclear weapons is made by the President of the Russian Federation. The President of the Russian Federation, and this is very important here, this is talking about demonstration attacks. Okay, we're going to discuss this. The President of the Russian Federation may, if necessary, inform the military political leadership of other states and or international organizations about the readiness of the Russian Federation to use nuclear weapons or about the decision taken to use nuclear weapons, as well as about their fact of use. So there's lots of talk about what are called demonstration attacks. So the Russians say, right, we're going to blow up 4 islands, one of the Aleutian Islands, some rock somewhere in the Pacific, somewhere in the Indian Ocean, and somewhere in the South Atlantic, right? Literally rocks of no people on them, okay? And we're telling you the day and the time during daylight that we're going to nuke these islands, and you can send whatever the fuck you want there to shoot down our missiles, and we're going to prove to you that you can't stop us. And if you push any harder, the next place is going to be New York, Boston, Philadelphia. I don't think they'd waste a nuke on Detroit.
DC? Can we get DC?
Yeah, DC or on Sam Cheney's house because we want to fuck up his nuclear panels. I mean, solar panels, right?
It just got them too, man.
Just got them too. Yeah, that's right. Did you get the nuclear blast proof ones?
I did not get that in the. It's not part of the warranty.
Not part of the warranty. Damn. So the idea there is that is the final warning. So that's another step in the escalation ladder that Jones reckons we've maxed out. Okay, and Ritter's like, oh, we're all going to die tomorrow. Okay, and like I explained, I was the first call-in guest on the Ritter show. I offered to do this because he was freaking out. I was trying to save him from having a heart attack, but also was concerned that he was giving people literally misinformation, right? And he heard me out and he said, send it to me and I'll think about covering it on Friday. Now, frankly, if I was on air, literally running around screaming, we're all going to die, we're all going to die, which is what he's been doing today, I personally wouldn't wait until Friday. It's just me. But that was his decision. His show, I called out the fucking blue, had no other way of getting a hold of him. I was lucky to be the first person on. He heard me out, was interested, wanted to read the document for himself, didn't trust me to read it honestly. And I said, you can put out a proviso that you've not got the source document in English. And they declined to do that because they only had an hour broadcast and they wanted to take other callers. Perfectly reasonable. If you're not telling everyone, put your head between your knees and kiss your ass goodbye. He literally was saying we're all going to die. And so was Jones, right? And so once again, this is how you're getting the honest truth with all the details, in this case with the Russians saying, you've got to read this, and explaining what the Union State is, how this document is already ultra summarized. I couldn't halve this document. I could knock out, of the 26 paragraphs or 27 paragraphs, I could probably knock out like 5 without changing the meaning of it. Okay, so the nuances and the details are extremely important. We've almost finished.
And they're acknowledging the fact of space weapons and direct energy weapons. And
Yes.
if you talk about this, they say, no, you're insane. It doesn't exist.
But literally, this is now official government policy of the Russian Federation, signed by President Putin fucking today.
Our media and government still won't even acknowledge.
I'm not extrapolating. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not filling in words. It specifically says in 2 separate paragraphs, direct energy weapons and space attack weapons. Okay, so going on, we get to the tasks and functions of the federal bodies, and frankly, these are the paragraphs that are just like the org charts. So they're important but not dramatic. So it says, the President of the Russian Federation exercises general leadership of the state policy in the field of nuclear deterrence. The government of the Russian Federation implements measures aimed to implement economic policy, maintaining and developing nuclear deterrence, and also formulates and implements foreign and information policy in the field of nuclear deterrence. Now, in terms of economic policy that enables the maintenance and development of nuclear deterrence, it should be noted, and I sent this to you, I believe, and retweeted it, in the Global Times today, they announced that yesterday, the new Russia to China gas pipeline, the capacity of which is equivalent to all 4 Russia to Germany Nord Stream pipelines. So there's A and B of Nord Stream 1 and A and B of Nord Stream 2. This pipeline that goes from Russia to China is the equivalent, like, annual transmission volume of all 4 Nord Stream pipelines. People think there's like 1 or 2, Nord Stream 1 and 2. There's not. They're pairs, 2 pairs. So this pipeline, as of yesterday, is fully operational. And so they said that they're doing some, like, safety testing and stuff for the next few weeks. But as of January the 1st, it's like pump. So Russia has totally replaced its entire European market, the whole of the EU, right, with now selling additional gas to China. And this is how China is going to trend off coal, by switching to pumped natural gas, not liquefied natural gas, just free-flowing gas, which saves liquefying it in Russia and then regasifying it in China. And this is not Paris, Siberia. This is the next reiterations of that.
Maybe Putin will blow up that pipeline too, huh?
Yeah, just despite his own
just for the hell of it, right?
Just fuck it, for the hell of it, right? So guess how long this pipeline runs in total?
How far?
5,551 kilometers. Right? And it was finished 7 months ahead of schedule. How long do you think it would take to do a pipeline that went from one side of America to the other and back in the United States?
Couldn't even be done.
Would probably offend some spirit creatures or some bald eagles.
You'd have, Extinction Rebellion and these kind of far left-wing environmental terrorist groups attacking it.
Yeah.
State and local left-wing governments would block it. If you couldn't even get it done. Imagine what it would. You couldn't do it in the state of California, let alone across the whole country.
So it's not a bridge to nowhere. it's a total replacement for Nord Stream 7 months early. So when Putin told the Russian Chamber of Commerce in March of 2022, right? Look east, my friends. Everything is being sent east. Forget about Europe. And I was begging to get on air before I had encountered you with Infowars, and they're like, it's not very interesting. Yeah, this is the outcome of that. And I was on this red hot. I remember sitting in my car outside an airport in Tampa, freaking out, trying to get on air because I'd read the transcript of Putin's speech to the Russian Chamber of Commerce. So I'm a long-term nerd rather than just a short-term nerd. But now we can see this stuff starting to come to fruition. And with the money from that, they're not only refurbishing T-55s, but they're building more Su-57s and Satan II intercontinental ballistic missiles.
So all the sanctions have essentially failed now.
Completely and totally failed.
Good job, State Department.
Yeah, good job, State Department. Yeah, but we are bankrupting Germany, so it's working to a certain extent. Not bankrupting, but destroying their economy. There's now two. Here we go. We got paragraph 24, almost finished. The Security Council of the Russian Federation formulates the main directions of military policy in the field of nuclear deterrence, which is their equivalent of like the NSC, not NSC, not NSA, and coordinates the activities of federal executive bodies and organizations participating in the implementation of decisions adopted by the president, not the parliament, but by the president of the Russian Federation concerning nuclear deterrence. Final couple of paragraphs. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, through the General Staff of the Armed Forces, shall directly plan and implement organizational and military measures in the area of nuclear deterrence. And everyone will be enormously glad to know that there's only one final paragraph, which is number 26. Other federal executive bodies and organizations shall participate in the implementation of decisions taken by the President of the Russian Federation concerning ensuring nuclear deterrence in accordance with their own powers. So there we go. It didn't take that long, less than 1 hour. Nobody else has stated they've bothered to read that document. Not Jones, not Ritter, not The Last American Vagabond, not Redacted, not Hervé Morich. None of these people.
Not Voice of America.
Yeah. So it's bloody important, right? So what we see is this term massive and critical threat, nuclear threats against Russia's allies, unlisted, conventional threats against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Russia or Belarus, okay? And generally an enormous expansion of the categories of situations that could potentially trigger Russian use of nuclear weapons. And this totally...
The crazy thing also, Simon, is the allies sections where we don't even know who their allies are.
Yeah, exactly. And Iran may join that list like next week or the following week. That's their comprehensive cooperation agreement that we've been waiting since March for them all to sign. Okay? So that's concerning that they say allies. Does that include China? Now, China says we don't have an alliance, but then they turn around and say it's beyond an alliance. It's a new version of alliance. It's an agreement of coordination in the new era. So is that a fucking alliance or not? Okay? But on the first reading of it, what is unequivocally true is Russia has just extended its nuclear deterrence umbrella over North Korea. That is without doubt. Okay? In much the same way that America has extended their nuclear umbrella over South Korea. They expressly did that. Okay? So that just goes to show how these crazy Koreans hitting each other could actually trigger World War III, irrespective of Ukraine and the fucking aardvarks, who may well use tactical nuclear weapons to take out the buried nuclear research facilities of the Iranians. That would be nuclear use against a Russian ally, which would trigger a nuclear response against everyone that the aardvarks are allied with, which of course includes America.
I'm gonna wake up, yes and no. I'm gonna kiss some part of. I'm gonna keep this secret. I'm gonna close my body now. I guess I die another day. 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 I guess I'll die another day. Another day. I'll die another day. Another day. I'll die another day. Another day. I'll die another day. Sigmund Freud. Analyze this. Analyze this. Analyze this. I'm gonna break the cycle. I'm gonna shake up the system. I'm gonna destroy my ego. I'm gonna close my body now. I think I'll find another way. There's so much more to know. I guess I'll die another day. It's not my time to go. For every sin I'll have to pay. I've time to work, I've time to play. I think I'll find another way. It's not my time to go. I'm gonna avoid the cliche. I'm gonna suspend my senses. I'm gonna delay my pleasure. I'm gonna close my body now. I guess I'll die another day. 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 I think I'll find another way. There's so much more to